7 o'clock, and we are going to call the Concord Housing Roundtable of August 16 to order. I am Liz Rust, and I'm your convener tonight, and I will be taking minutes for those who have a quorum and have a need to record their minutes. And we okay, let me just make some notes as I go here. So I think that how we do the joint meetings is the different groups call their groups to order, right, and open the meeting for their individual group. So we will start with the Housing Authority.
Okay, thanks, Liz.
Sure.
Let's quick take a roll call to begin the meeting for the Concord Housing Authority. Stephanie Krobeck here. Ed, is Ed in?
Here.
There he is. Rick Eifler.
Here.
Stefan Bader.
Here.
And B. Foschek. Is she on?
Yes.
Awesome.
I think I saw her. Is she there? B, are you there?
We can continue. We have a quorum.
Okay.
We're set to go.
Very good. So how many? So I'm sorry. Can I just get who's are you? Rick, Ed,
Stefan,
yeah,
and myself.
So not Charles. I'm sorry. Charles is off. Gotcha.
Oh, he'll always be a part, right?
Of course. Yeah. Of course.
As is Linda. Linda's always a part of us too.
Yes. Okay, Keith, would you like to open for the trust?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Keith Bergman, Chair of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, called the meeting to order at 7:03, and take attendance by roll call. Linda Escobedo.
Present.
Mike Lawson.
Present.
Carrie Healy. Carrie, listen to me. Listen to what, did you hear what I said? Carrie
Yeah.
LaFleur.
I did. I get a promotion.
Exactly.
That was was that an upgrade or?
Present.
And Keith Bergman present. Rich Feely, I was thinking Feely, is not here. So we have a quorum. Thanks.
Very good, thanks. And Lee?
Lee Smith, Chair of Concord Housing Development Corporation, calling to order our meeting at 7:04 in connection with the Housing Roundtable. Roll call vote of members present. I see on my screen, no one. Sorry. Julie McClure.
Present.
Ray Andrews.
Present.
Lee Smith is present. Is there anyone else CHD that I don't see?
I do not see anyone else.
We have a quorum.
Very good. Okay, so I think none of the other groups have a quorum, but let's just go and see who's here from the other housing partners. From the Housing Foundation.
Charles Phillips and Holly Dawson is here.
Perfect. Welcome all.
And Steve Carr is here.
Oh, okay, there you are, hiding underneath Candy there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh.
Nice to see you.
Nice to
And CPC.
We don't have a quorum, but Burton Flint and Nancy Nelson, Ed Larner, and we got, I think, Sue Felshen as well.
How many would you be a quorum?
I believe it's 5. We're a 9-member committee.
9-member committee, okay. Who was here? So Ed is on your,
Ed's our housing rep.
Gotcha.
And Nancy Nelson as well.
Yep. Yeah, gotcha.
And,
Okay,
and Sue
I'm with you.
Felshen.
Yep. Thank you.
Roundtable.
From the select board?
Mary Hartman. I'm besides Linda Escobedo, it's she and I tonight.
Very good. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
I think that was it. Anyone here from the planning board?
I think all we have tonight, excuse me, is Sue Felshen.
Oh, Sue's from the planning board. Okay. Welcome, Sue. Where are you? There you are. Hi, Sue. Nice to see you. And then from staff, we have Elizabeth Hughes is here. And we have Megan, I think I saw you here. Yep, there you are. Nice to see you. Erin Stevens is here, I think, right? It's hard to find everybody. And then Jennifer Polito for the staff for the Housing Authorities here. Lovely. I see Diane Proctor. You're on the CPC, is that correct, Diane?
I am.
Is that going to make it a quorum now then, Burton?
I believe that does make it a quorum, so I will call the meeting to order as of
Yep.
7:07. Thank you.
Yep. Do you want to roll call everyone in, or are you going to pass that formality? I'm just going to offer that to you.
I'll pass the formality since we've all announced ourselves already. Thanks.
Very good. Okay. All right. So did we
And
get
we're out of time.
right. Did we get everybody? This is always a complicated aspect of the, I mean, the Housing Roundtable is a great construct that we have here in Concord to bring all these groups together, but the sort of open meeting logistics are a little take a little while to kind of get us all in the present meeting together. Okay, so we're going to be here. So I think that everyone has the agenda. Generally we start with a general project update from the different groups, but this particular meeting, I think we're going to organize it a little bit differently. Keith has done a bang up job of consolidating and hearing from the different groups in town, especially around, projects and with a focus on project funding. And I think that he is poised to present on that and to lead a discussion and looking for, I think, really consensus from this group on funding priorities. So while it's a very informative discussion and all that, I think that there's some hope that the groups will weigh in at some process. Is that fair enough, Keith? Did I?
Yeah, yes, thanks
Keith,
very
Anna?
much. And I guess I would add, at the beginning, we do have the expectation that that the select board will be meeting on, I believe it's Monday, April 28th, to sort of hear from this group and to be able to, with a quorum of their members present, provide their input and direction and leadership. And that is just such an important part of what we're about here, that and so we'll look forward to that next step after tonight. I'm going to share the screen. I test drove this slide deck with the CPC last night, and I thought I would do it tonight as well. And this is just a reminder of who we are. We're the Concord Housing Roundtable, which is 7 boards convened by the Regional Housing Services Office. What's new is that the Select Board, Planning Board, and Community Preservation Committee are now members, if you will, of the roundtable. It has been the 4 groups with housing in their name: the Housing Authority, the Housing Foundation, the Housing Development Corporation, and the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, who have been the formal or informal housing roundtable. But in the process last year of updating the housing production plan, which we spent an awful lot of time on, all of us, we saw that a key step was to make sure that we had a continuing group that we could get together to monitor implementation of the strategies in the housing production plan. So that's who we are, and that's what our mission is to implement the housing production plan. And just as a reminder, and I sent out a lot of materials to you and in an email before the meeting, but one of the things was this little chart, which this table, which shows the 24 housing strategies in the plan, and attempts to identify who are the lead entities and the support groups for each one of those strategies. And this housing production plan, as you'll recall, was formally adopted by the select board and the planning board last December. Both of them approved it unanimously, on the unanimous recommendation, by the way, of all four of the groups with housing in their name. And then that plan was approved by the state, then DHCD, in January. So that is our Bible. That is our newly updated list of things to do. Many of the projects you're familiar with and know that things are going on. The Strategy 8, MBTA community zoning, everybody knows about, and everyone sees all that is being done to engage the community to be able to go forward with that. But we're also looking specifically at some housing production goals, and I'm going to focus on those. And in the draft worksheet that has been circulating in some form or another over the last month or two to all of our housing partners, we've added information as we've gotten it. We still have some holes in it where you might see the word "other" to indicate a project that has not yet been identified. But what this the draft worksheet, which in toto looks like this, and it has a backside with a detailed description of the projects that we have identified. These projects are sorted by housing production plan strategy. So we see in strategy 1, Assabet River Bluff, 2, Junction Village, 3 is other, which so far includes potentially the surplus state property at 91B Main Street in West Concord, and even the Novo Riverside Commons 40B location, which is actually listed. It's identified in the Housing Production Plan Strategy 3 as a potential site for housing development. There are other sites as well, which we can be talking about. But the focus of these projects in particular has been on adding units to the subsidized housing inventory. I didn't do a slide on it, but it's worth knowing and having in the record of the meeting that we are officially at 9.97% towards our 10% goal. That the state finally issued the denominator for calculating the 10%. That is the the 2020 U.S. federal census count for year-round housing units, and our number of and our numerator, the number of units in the subsidized housing inventory, was unchanged, 715 units. And as the denominator went up, the percentage went down. And we had done the calculation recently for the select board that if, for example, the Novo Riverside Commons project were to be approved by the ZBA, and because it's rental and 25% of them, that is 51 of the 201 units, are deed restricted at 80% of area mean income, that the town would get to count all 201 units on the subsidized housing inventory, which will bring our 40B percentage up from 9.97% to 12.75%, which would be welcome news. But we've got a number of other things that are in the works for potential development as housing, as adding affordable units. We can go into the detail of each one. That we have the folks, we have CHDC to talk about their projects. The town can talk about the surplus state property, or perhaps Riverside Commons, or any other properties that might be identified. And in addition, in a category that addresses, well, first I want to note that strategy 13 is Concord Housing Authority units, and we remain open to any projects that the Housing Authority would want to bring forward when it can, or when it doesn't have funding to do that through its own channels with the state government. But strategy 14 is services for seniors of low income, and that is what would capture two expressions of interest that we've, or three actually, expressions of interest that we've received in pulling together this plan. One is to continue the CHDC small grant program, which has been in operation for many years, is about to run out of money, would not be eligible for CPA funding, and so would hope to get some monies from the trust in order to continue that. Also, the town has expressed interest through a couple of channels on a rental housing assistance and an emergency housing assistance program. So those are other things that are on our radar screen that we can talk about. The piece that, and now to put it all together, what we're identifying is that, what we're seeking to identify is, with all these things that we might do, how much money do we have, and when would it be in place to be able to move forward with projects? And I'll make the editorial comment, at least, that it's my personal hope that we put our housing money to work, and that we create units with it, and not just bank it and watch the fund balances grow and the interest income come in. That it's all about putting the money to work, in my opinion. So the trust has a balance of $3.1 million currently, and most of that, over $2 million of that, comes from transfers from unneeded, no longer needed funds for the Christopher Heights at Junction Village project. And we're grateful to the Community Preservation Committee and to the Select Board for sponsoring the town meeting articles, which redirected those $2 million that had been appropriated in the past, to make those available to the trust to spend on projects that are ready to go. And in fact, in the case of the CPC's funds of $1,044,000, our grant agreement between the trust and the CPC through the town requires that $1 million at least be spent only on units that can be countable on the subsidized housing inventory. So that would mean up to 80% of AMI. But we're grateful to be in this position. We're grateful to the support. Some of the questions that we hope to get direction from tonight, from anyone that cares to offer their personal opinion or the opinion of their boards, is considering all the projects that are on the radar screen, which projects should be invited to submit a full application to the trust so that they can move forward this year, or what trust funds should be reserved for projects which might apply later. Not all projects are ready to go right now. In fact, some projects won't be ready to go until some months from now. But because the trust has a fund balance, we would be able to act on an application that were submitted some months from now without waiting for a town meeting. That's our function as as an entity that can move quickly as opportunities arise if we have the funding. So, and in fact, the trust itself, if in expending funds this year, may find itself, it may be advantageous for the trust to reapply for funding for next year. So where would that come from? Not free cash, we're told. And I'll say that much, but and if the town wanted to explain further, that's fine. But we're recognizing that there's other competition for free cash funds. We didn't get a free cash money at town meeting this year, although we did get a $500,000 a year for 4 years in a row, and we're grateful for that. Other funding source, in fact, as I reminded them last night, and I'm sure they knew better than I, that our preeminent source of housing funds in Concord, below these many years, has been the Community Preservation Fund that they have spent in the 22% of the total CPA funds, some $6 million over time, towards housing. And so one of the questions for this year would be for our planning purposes, what sum could the CPC make available for community housing in its upcoming round, which we all know is September 8th. And I have to admit, that's why we're meeting in August. That's why we have the roundtable in August, to make sure we take full advantage of that funding opportunity. And if there's a consensus or input on what application should be made to the CPC for funding in this upcoming round, or as well as which one which application should be directed to the trust instead, for us to act on sooner rather than later. Could be a timing issue. Another question about funding, though, is whether the select board could make any additional town ARPA funds available for housing projects. Those would have to be spent, as I understand it, right away. I don't know if there are funds available or not, and Carrie can weigh in on that, as well as what grant opportunities, state and federal funding could the town pursue for housing projects. Which ones would be the most competitive of the many things we might do? Which ones could be most competitive if there's a state funding source? And the last thing I want to mention here is that we're doing this all now, figuring out how to spend other people's money, or the trust is, because we don't have a dedicated funding source yet. And it's not for lack of trying. The town has on several occasions petitioned the state legislature for a real estate transfer fee and a building permit surcharge to fund the trust. There are also, in this session of the legislature, competing local option bills on a statewide basis for a real estate transfer fee. So at some point, we'll get a signal from Beacon Hill on which, if any of those, might be possible. But that's sort of the big picture. We are looking to identify a list of what the needs are, to compare that with funding that's available, to figure out which ones are best go to the trust for quick action, and which ones should go to the CPC or to town meeting as appropriate. So that's sort of a general overview, and we'll welcome comment. And I wonder, Liz, if we might want to start with just maybe offering that some of the applicants or potential applicants just give a quick overview of their projects, and perhaps start with Lee and CHDC at the top of the list, Assabet and Junction Village.
Great idea. Lee, are you, I can't even see you anymore. Where are you?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
So for those who don't know or aren't following, our two primary projects are Assabet River Bluff and Junction Village. Assabet River Bluff is creating 5 affordable units to our existing in a two-family existing residence. We're working on transferring ownership of that building to the Concord Housing Authority. And that will be 2 units in our condominium, which will also include our yet to be built 3 additional units. The Housing Authority will be helping manage the condominium association once that's all set up. We're poised to submit our application to the town for our PRD, which is basically the permitting that will allow the construction as shown to begin. Once we've got that, we're going to issue a request for proposals to the development community, showing our architectural renderings, what we expect, and that there'll be SHI units upon completion. The expectation is that in order to put them on the SHI, it's going to require some type of financial subsidy. We're back of the envelope estimating that to be in the range of $1.5 million, but remains to be seen on that. And we've been in discussions with the trust about them being a source of those funds. Junction Village, we met in at least, I think, 6 community meetings, forums, etc., to find out what the community wanted to see developed on that site following the termination of the Christopher Heights Assisted Living project. And family housing was the consensus for that site. And our latest thinking is that we should issue a request for proposals to the development community for that project at the same time that we put out the RFP for the Assabet River project, with the hope that perhaps a developer might want to do both at the same time. So there could be some economies of scale, maybe some consistency in architecture and theory about what that type of housing could look like, and also maybe accelerate both projects by having them done relatively simultaneously. And we don't have any idea what a subsidy might look like for that, because we don't know how many units and everything else, but those will also be affordable units. And did I leave anything out?
Do you want to mention the small grant program request?
Sure. So we've asked the trust for 2 annual allocations of $25,000 each that would help fund that program, in which we accept applications during the year for home improvements for eligible lower income folks, home ownership units that are primarily health and safety issues. So for example, your staircase in and out of the house is rotting away, needs to be replaced, or your roof is leaking, or your windows are crumbling, things of that nature. Your hot water heater needs to be replaced, with the idea that the folks could use some assistance in paying for those significant repairs to be able to keep them in the house safe and sound. So that program is basically out of money. So hence the current request to the trust, which hasn't been formalized yet, but we are looking to the trust to fund that for the next 2 years, because we've got no other source of funds for that. And as Keith said, it is not an eligible Community Preservation Act expenditure.
I see Diane has her hand up. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Liz, and hi, Lee, and everybody. Lee, where did that money come from that let you do this? Out of which you're out of it this at the present moment. How did you originally get
small
funding
grants?
for that?
I think this predates me. I think it came from the Lally Woods project.
That's correct.
Which is out on Route 2A. Other than driving by it, I don't know much about that project, but I think it was sale proceeds from those units.
And those grants were funded by the state, were funded by?
No, I'm saying that the sale of the units that were produced at Lally Woods went into CHDC coffers, and that's what we've been spending on the small grants
Thank you so
program.
much.
But Liz might be able to offer a little
So the
more on that.
CHDC was given the land It was given the land to develop the Lally Woods on it. And the CHDC developed some market rate units there, as well as some moderate income restricted and some 80% restricted. So it was a mixed income development. The sale of the market rate units particularly went into the CHDC bank account, and that's what they have been using both for the small grant program as well as for their ongoing operations. You know, they have insurance and financial statements that they produce and some of those operational expenses. And that was back in that was 10 years ago.
Wow.
And so the CHDC hasn't gotten any money since 10 years ago. So really is really running very thin. And this particular program has no funding source, and in fact can't really make any grants until the disposition of this request is made this fall.
Thank you so much.
Are there other questions of Lee or the CHDC about their proposed projects?
So I would just mention, because one of the questions that you have is whether, you know, which pot of money should the requests come? And Lee mentioned this, but I think that the CHDC has talked to the trust because the Assabet River Bluff project can continue this year. So waiting for town meeting would put a delay on the project. So if the idea is to create the units, you know, as quickly as you can, now, it's never very quick, right? Because there's so much to do and so many pieces, but not waiting for town meeting would speed up the process, or getting funded from the trust would speed up the process. So I just wanted to add that in. Just Lee did mention it, but just to be sure that that's clear.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. And as well, for Junction Village, the $50,000 for pre-development could be preferably be acted on this year by the trust, rather than submitting an application that would require town meeting approval many months from now.
Right,
and actually, it sounds like a trifecta, and the CHDC small grant program for all three of those things. That I think hearing the CHDC's preference is to have the trust fund them with our available money, so that you can get to it, that you can move those forward.
I think
Right, and that pre-development money for
I
Junction
wonder if
Village.
there's any-
Sorry, the pre-development money for Junction Village
go ahead.
would be particularly useful if we in fact issue the RFP this fall. That'll be things for due diligence, environmental testing, things of that nature that a developer might be looking for help with, just as they consider whether to proceed with development on that site.
Thanks, Lee. If we were meeting together, I'd probably look around the room and see how many heads were shaking, and or how many, or the looks, or the backward glances to try to gauge a favor or opposition. But we'll say if anyone feels strongly that about these projects in one way or another, when you either you can either say it now, or you can say when we do wrap up as we go. But that's the sort of feedback we're hoping to get. And as I say, we'll also be looking to get the feedback direction from the select board on the 28th of August. I'll just call on any of my trust members who wanted to. Oh, there's Stefan. Okay, who can reliably be counted on to raise his hand.
I'll take that as a compliment, Keith. Thank you. It seems to me that short money of 25,000 or even 2-year commitment of 50,000 to the small grant program makes eminent sense, because there's nothing more confusing to people than a program that starts and stops and starts and stops. We're not running a trolley service here. If you have a program, even if it's small, it ought to be able to continue. So I'm in favor of that being one of the, without much ado allocations. It seems to make sense to me.
Thanks. And we haven't had a pause yet, but without additional funding, we're really on the precipice of that.
Yeah, Mary.
Mary?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you. I see that you've got 1.5 million. And does that include rehabbing the existing 2 units and building 3 new ones? Or what does that 1.5 cover?
It's amorphous right now. It does not include money that we've already spent on improving the existing 2-family.
Okay.
But that's what we've budgeted as, call it a buy down, to make those 3 units new construction affordable.
Do you think it's realistic? I'm not a builder. Do you think it's realistic to build 3 units at 1.5 million?
Well, that's not the cost of construction. That's going to be the delta between what it costs to build them and sell them at market rate versus sell them at an SHI number.
So, but you think that's reasonable?
It's our best estimate today.
Okay.
You know, that the CHGC also has $500,000 that it got at town meeting, you know,
Yep.
just now. So,
I see that.
so that is thought to do all the site work and all this, so that the 1.5 is really just the construction subsidy. So it is thought to be sufficient.
Great.
Yeah,
Just
Holly.
on that point, sorry, just real quick, the
Mhm.
CPC approved our grant agreement for that 500,000, as Liz
Mhm.
just described last night.
Perfect. Yeah, Holly.
I just I was wondering, in the last project that the foundation was involved with at 930 Main, Habitat for Humanity kind of came through with like the miracle way to build affordable housing. And I don't know if they fit in any of this. And I had originally thought maybe that Assabet was a place for them, but has that been discussed at all?
I think the RFP, you know, Habitat can certainly respond to the RFP. So, I mean, then we'll just see who responds. I think that Minuteman ARC is also interested in responding. So there might be some responses that are less traditional than regular, you know, stick-built construction. So we'll just have to see. And that would be the way that the CHDC would hear about those proposals.
Okay.
Very good. I don't see any other hands, so I'll go further down the list. Next is to the and thank you to Lee and Liz and CHDC for all the work on these. Next is the category or the strategy of other land to create SHI units, and there are a few things that are listed here. I'll mention one. Liz suggested that the trust itself might want to budget $100,000 of its funds for doing feasibility or on specific sites that may come up because they're we often get approached with potential properties that perhaps were not on our radar screen, and we need to have some way to gauge whether it's a good opportunity or not. Specific projects, though, to talk about. One first is if you read strategy number 3, and towards the end, there's a list of maybe a dozen or more potential sites that might be developed. And number 1 is 300 to 310 Baker Avenue, which ends up, which perhaps coincidentally, perhaps not, ends up being the 40B application for Riverside Commons. The trust prepared a comprehensive set of comments to the select board on the Novo Riverside Commons site suitability letter that the select board got from Mass Housing, and as Mass Housing makes a decision on whether to approve it as a suitable site to proceed to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And among the things that we took note of, first, that we heard at a meeting of the Select Board in late July, the developer who the town appears to be in, direct communication with, everyone's talking. The developer thought that perhaps they might seek to get a waiver from the $1.5 million sewer connection fee that the town would charge for hooking up to that property to the sewer. As a matter of policy, communities sometimes, ones that I've worked for, have often done it, and that is waive the fees for affordable units if the community is able to do so. The issue, and in fact, the waiver that was mentioned, the potential waiver request that was mentioned by the developer was to seek to have a portion of the fee that would apply to the 51 affordable units waived. The market rate ones, they would not seek a waiver. But if they did seek, say, to have 25% of that $1.5 million sewer charge defrayed by the town, because the Concord sewer system is funded by the users and not also by subsidies from the general government, that it really, there's no mechanism by which the town could waive the fee without passing for one developer without passing it on to all the other users. So more typically what would happen is that the town itself would need to come up with a way to waive the money you by providing the sewer department with the money that they need for that. And the trust, we said, could be a source of funding if that worked for the select board. And we specifically made the suggestion that the select board take up this issue along with any other issues that they wanted to negotiate with the developer directly, to see if there were things that the town could do for the developer, that other things that the developer could address for town concerns, and that those be wrapped up in a so-called host community agreement, a voluntary agreement between the town and the developer, which would not be subject to the, it would be informed by, but would not be subject to the comprehensive permit issued by the ZBA, which is appealable to the state if need be. So it's an opportunity to look at what things the town and the developer can do for each other, wrap it up into an agreement, and if there needs to be a local funding source for part of that from the town, that the trust is interested in hearing about it, and we're very interested as well in being part of that negotiation process, if that's of use to the select board. And I'll just say I was pleased that the select board's comments to the mass housing began with their support in general for the project. There are issues they'd like to have addressed, but that in general, their support for that project. And so that was good to hear. And as I say, it's the properties listed right in our strategy 3 of the housing production plan. Another property that is also listed in that plan, and which has been on the trust radar screen, is 91B Main Street in West Concord. It's a piece of surplus state property originally acquired by MassDOT with federal highway funds back in the 60s for when Route 2 was constructed. And it is being made available to the town. We hope that it could be made available for less than market value. It has a appraised valuation of 600 and something $1,000. You could put two duplexes on it, I think. It's on the sewer, so perhaps there would be the opportunity for greater density, and there could be greater density still if that property were included in the MBTA communities zone. So lots of things going on. It's on our radar screen. The trust had asked the select board to look into getting help from our legislative delegations if need be, to see if just how below market rate the property might be available to the town. So I welcome any further updates that the town might have on that, and can also proceed to or if there's any, or if there are any other properties that the town wanted to put on the table. Carrie?
No, Keith, unfortunately, we don't have any additional update on 91B Main Street just yet.
Okay. We'll keep asking. Okay. Thank you. And are there any other, and since we're talking about the town, maybe this would be an appropriate time to hear from the town about other funding applications which are on our radar screen. I don't know if there's going to be one for any other specific properties, although I see Delia, and I can call on you. Thank you. Thanks for being.
Yeah, I may be the only one who can't hear you, but
I can't hear you either, Delia.
yeah, I think there's a.
Nope. Me too. Looks like you're muted. Oh. Turn up the volume.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Thank you, Nancy.
Well, been there. Oh, maybe not.
No, I'm going to suggest that perhaps Delia log off and try to log back on and see if we can hear from you. And that in the meantime, if the town has we're aware of some potential funding applications for housing rental assistance program and a emergency assistance program, and maybe Carrie, could you start us off on those two?
Yeah, I'm not sure I saw Bonnie Wilbur on the call, so I don't know that we have an update there, but Bonnie Wilbur on behalf of the town submitted an application, I believe, for $50,000 for some ongoing rental assistance. This would be a new program that was submitted to the Affordable Housing Trust, and really that's about all I have on that. But again, it would be for ongoing rental assistance. The other thing I wanted to mention, Keith, because you had mentioned ARPA funding, so I'll just since I have the floor, I'll just speak to that now. The town received a total of $5.6 million in ARPA funding back in fiscal 22. It allocated a small amount of money in fiscal 22, but the select board decided that it wanted to consider 25% of the balance of the funds each year for the next 4 fiscal years. So for fiscal 23 through 26, about $1.3 million, that it would consider applications for funding, again, on an annual basis in conjunction with the capital planning and operating budget process. So in the next month or so, we will be issuing, I guess, a notice of funding availability, to put it in those terms, that we will be taking applications for up to or taking applications and considering approving funding for up to $1.3 million worth of ARPA funding for fiscal 25. So beginning July 1, 2024. So that is a funding opportunity coming up in the next few weeks.
Very good. Thanks so much. I had mentioned earlier, if the trust, for example, there may be others who want to apply as well, but if the trust was looking for a source of funding for, the around the $500,000 a year that we had gotten for the first 4 years that the town meeting funded it, could the ARPA funding be a potential source for that funding?
It certainly can be. So we set aside $500,000 in the current fiscal year, fiscal 24, and there's an opportunity to request an additional $500,000 or more for fiscal 25, and then again for fiscal 26.
Thanks, Carrie. I see Diane's hand.
Hi, thank you. Carrie, what's the deadline for that application?
We haven't set one yet.
Okay.
But likely in the month of September. This will be the first time that we're going to have a formal process, and we're expecting to tie it to our capital planning process, which is open September 1 and closing September 30th. But again, in a couple of weeks, we'll have some more information out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I see Mike Lawson raising his actual hand.
I don't know how to do it, Charles. knows how to do it. I just, Carrie, are there restrictions on the type of request that the town will entertain?
There are no legal restrictions from the federal government on that funding, but the town would be looking for capital projects. We're not looking to fund operating expenses.
Thank you.
Were there other hands or comments or questions? Okay.
Yeah, I raised my hand.
Charles, yeah.
Yeah, Carrie and Linda, has there been a discussion among you and the Public Works Department about the cost to expand the sewer system, the sewer, what do you call it? The
Wastewater?
Wastewater plant, yeah, wastewater plant, in order to enable these new large projects to go forward.
Yeah, Linda, I'm happy to start that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Sure. So Charles and others on the call, the town has been trying diligently for the last several years to get an increase to our treatment permit at the existing plant. Without making any additional capital improvements, we believe we could process up to 200,000 more gallons per day. That would be significant. That would about double the remaining treatment capacity we have at that plant. And again, that would be at no additional capital costs, but we have not been able to get that permit approved at the state level. It's been very frustrating, and we continue to try, but we are just have not been able to make progress on getting that new permit. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head if we wanted to expand, make a capital investment in that plant, what that cost might be and what we could get in terms of gallons per day. We've really just been trying to get that 200,000 gallon per day approved and have not yet been successful.
Well, that's good news anyway, that the capability is there.
Diane and then Julie.
Carrie, do you think we've not been successful because of competing bids for that money? Or do you think it's something about how is that hierarchy determined? Because I know that when we meet our MBTA goals, that we have that again gives us access to those kinds of capital funds. But do you know why we haven't been able to be approved?
So the issue is not money. It's just getting the permit approved, and it's competing interests. Competing environmental interests are the reason why we have not been able to get that permit approved. We have reached out to the Lieutenant Governor and have established a good working relationship with her, and we are hopeful that she will be able to help facilitate approval of this permit.
Thank you.
Julie, and then Mary.
Hi, Carrie. I think you just somewhat answered my question, which was if you were going to get support from the public on this, where should they send their appeal? And it sounds like it's the Lieutenant Governor who might have the most influence on this kind of decision. But my sense is that there is also political will here that could support that. Or is this really just about the town and state diplomacy?
Well, that is interesting. We think with the help of the Lieutenant Governor, we might be able to make some progress here, because we would like to be able to implement the MBTA community zoning and actually have not only have the zoning, but actually have some development of affordable housing. That's obviously one of the primary goals of the governor and lieutenant governor. And we have the ability to expand our plant again with no additional capital cost. And we believe that there has to be a way to permit that. So, the permit process is through CPW and the Public Works Commission. So I think anybody who is interested in expressing support for that could do that, direct that to CPW, Alan Cathcart, the director, or the Public Works Commission, and they could help funnel that to the right place at the state level.
Mary?
Yeah, oh, thank you. Carrie, I think you answered my question, but let's just be sure. Do you think that our compliance with the MBTA Community Zoning Act will influence the state's decision around granting us this extra capacity? What's the link there?
I hope so. I would hope that the governor and lieutenant governor is interested in actually seeing the creation of housing, not just the creation of zoning. And for us in Concord, in order to be able to create housing, we need additional capacity. And I have had a couple of conversations with the lieutenant governor, and she seems very interested in Concord's interest and ability to create affordable housing, either on its own or through MBTA community zoning.
Thank you.
And anything else, Carrie? Actually, we were talking about town, and so there are, I think, the rental assistance. If there's someone to talk to us from the town about rental assistance program and emergency assistance, And then we'll go back to Delia after that. So Carlin Reed, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, but I'm speaking on my own personal behalf. I'm also trying to help the Hugh Cargill Trust seek some funding from the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, up to $25,000 per year for 2 years of funding, total of up to $50,000, to help bolster their existing emergency tenant rental assistance program, which is not very well known. In the last 15 months, the Hugh Cargill Trust has helped 10 households to a little over the tune of $6,000 in emergency, essentially one-time rental payments direct to the landlord. What I'm suggesting and the proposal that I've submitted is that some additional funds be made available to Hugh Cargill. And I want to note that on tonight's call is also with me the co-chair, one of the co-chairs of the Hugh Cargill Trust Committee, Bob Abraham. And Bob, if you want to speak to something about this, when I'm finished, I'll be done in just a moment. Feel free to add a few comments. This program is something that is in existence. It's not well known. It's kept confidential, and it is run through the intake process that Hugh Cargill has. I was made aware late this afternoon that Hugh Cargill does have access to some additional funds through the Trustee of Town Donations. And I understand that the committee is going to be talking about this matter further at their September 19th meeting. But for right now, the proposal that we've submitted is up to $25,000 per year for 2 years, fiscal year 24, fiscal year 25, to be run through the Hugh Cargill for emergency, essentially one-time rental assistance. Under the Hugh Cargill Trust charge, their payments to their client, the members, is limited pretty much to $500 per instance, up to a total of $1,000 annually. They use that pretty much as a guideline, more so than a stricture, but that's pretty much how they run their operations. Now, Bob, I know you're on this call. Is there anything else that you wanted me to add or that you want to add to this particular application request? Because now's the time to say it.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, Bob. Is there anything else that you want to add? Go ahead.
Okay. Well, yes, we are sort of, it's because of the restriction. We haven't been able to help as many people as we might be able to. With the additional funding, we would be able to, maybe help and increase publicity with it. We'd be able to help a lot more people in town. But, it's still on an emergency basis. And I think Bonnie Wilbur has submitted something on a long-term basis, but for our funds, this would probably fit in. We really haven't discussed it yet. It was a little preliminary information in our last meeting. However, this upcoming meeting, we're hoping to discuss, the details of how we could do this.
Sorry, what's the source of?
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. The source of funds would come from the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. Any other questions? Keith, is there anything else?
Well, thank you, Carlin. I see a couple of hands from our two select board members. We'll start with Mary and then Linda.
Thank you, Keith. I can understand that there's definitely a need within the town for rental assistance. My question is this within the purview of the Affordable Housing Trust? Given that, as you said earlier, Keith, it was founded by a bylaw that was passed at the 2020 town meeting that was to give the town a mechanism to react quickly to opportunities to create and retain affordable housing. So and I know that the list of powers that the trust has is very prescriptive and very detailed. I think there's 21 powers that it has, and they mirror the Mass General Law. So I'm just wondering, is this within, we don't have to answer this tonight, I'm just raising the question, is this within the power of the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust to fund rental assistance programs?
I have the same
I
question.
could respond.
Yeah, I was made aware of the question, and I do have an answer I can offer, and it is that the and I say so as the former chair of the committee that wrote the bylaw, the Affordable Housing Trust bylaw that went to town meeting, and as someone who administered an affordable housing trust in another town which had a similar bylaw. And in fact, in my experience, both of the places that I've worked on housing have had bylaws that parrot the state statute. And so it's an esoteric answer, but you can follow the clues. And here's what they are: that the typically rental assistance program is what's considered support for affordable housing. Now, one of the places that support for affordable housing shows up explicitly is the Community Preservation Act, where, in fact, if you go to the CPA Coalition website, they have a little matrix, and it says for creation, preservation, or support of all the categories of things. There's a check mark under housing for support, preservation, and creation. And the support, the definition of community preservation support specifically includes rental assistance. So I mention that because the trust enabling legislation and the bylaw that parrots that trust legislation refers to powers that the trust has, and it is to create and preserve affordable housing, but also to fund community housing under the CPA Act. And that is the hook that gets you the definition of whatever would be allowed with CPA funds. So the trust can spend its funds for the same purposes that the CPA could spend on community housing, which includes rental assistance. And I know that works in fact because in the Mass Housing Partnership, which puts out a guidebook on things that trusts can do, rental assistance programs are specifically identified, and indeed in the community where I worked when we Littleton, when we adopted a similar bylaw, that community is in fact implementing both a rental assistance and an emergency assistance program. So I know you can do it.
Can I ask a follow-on question?
Yeah.
If I understand you correctly, you're saying that the powers of the trust include the powers of the CPC, and the CPC has the power to fund rental assistance. So I guess my follow-on question is, why wouldn't we go directly to CPC for this request, especially since they have a recurring predictable source of revenue? And I'll leave it at that. We can talk about that more, I think, when you come to the select board meeting on August 28th.
Yeah, and I would say that that's a good question, because again, to use my example of Littleton, there's no dedicated funding sources for Littleton. I think they get Littleton Trust gets all their funds from CPC.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Linda Escobedo.
Yeah, thank you. Some good questions being asked. I would just remind everybody that the select board recently voted on the residential exemption, which will benefit homeowners roughly below 1.2 million, but will not benefit commercial real estate owners. So the increase that the town is expecting our taxpayers to face from the debt that will be incurred for the new middle school project will likely be passed on from the commercial real estate owners to their renters. And as we know, I think the recent number I read was that there are now 1,600 renters, or some number close to that in Concord. And we do know that many of them would qualify as low income or seniors on very fixed incomes. So I'm glad we're talking about the rental assistance. However, this sorts itself out, but it's an important topic for all of us to be discussing. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Liz, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going, this might be a little too detailed, but at the RHSO, we have run rental assistance programs for 4 years in different communities using different sources of funds. And I can say to Mary's question about the powers and the what is required to use CPA funds, what is required to use other sources of funds in terms of agreements and documentation. And we've worked with town councils on, the program materials to make sure they're compliant, is something that would need to be done. That the emergency programs are a little bit harder, but you can certainly do it, but there is administrative program setup to do. I'm just saying.
Thanks, Liz. And just to follow up on Linda's point, that and I know it's brand new to Concord, the idea of the residential exemption, which will benefit most or to the greatest degree the properties that are the property owners of property that is the of the lowest assessed value, that they will see a greater percentage of their tax bill waived by the residential exemption. But then but it will be shifted. What the properties who see a reduction in their tax bill, that gets shifted to all the other properties, and it specifically gets shifted to properties that are not owner occupied. So rental properties cannot get the residential exemption. So that is something that needs to be taken into consideration for the discussion. Mary?
Thank you. Keith, I just want to add that the select board discussed this at length and we voted unanimously to implement the residential tax exemption. But I will say that the question about whether this will negatively impact renters is an open question. There was a study done by Lexington that hired a group of economists to come in and actually model whether they thought renters would suffer because of this. And their conclusions were that they wouldn't. So it is an open question. I just want to caution us to conclude that this will definitely negatively impact renters. It was passed because we wanted to retain a lot of the modest homes within Concord, and we hope we accomplish that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary, and whatever, and it could be that whatever the facts point to us in the future, that if it doesn't affect folks, great. If it does end up affecting folks, it could be, then we would see the need to address that issue however we can. So thank you, Linda.
I just follow up with a quick comment. I appreciate Mary saying that this is still an open question, and in fact it is. But I think part of that study also indicated that there were more investment properties, investment in homes in Lexington, higher percentage. So that could definitely impact how we view this going forward. But I do agree with Mary, it is still an open question.
I'm sorry, for my clarification, is the open question around the rental assistance program? Or are you really talking about?
No, the impact.
No, it's
on
about the
renters.
impact of the residential exemption.
Right, which is a sort of a separate thing. I thought we were really on the rental assistance
Sorry,
program.
we got off on the rent.
Yeah,
We've jumped, we're focusing on the need for a rental assistance, which will be to some degree which we'll all be watching what the impact is on all of us with the residential exemption. So for property owners. So thank you. Thanks for that discussion. Is there any other questions about those rental and emergency assistance programs? I see Delia here back. We'll do a sound check.
Hi, Keith.
Yeah, all right, very good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry about my.
Yeah, you have the floor, and we were talking about trying to make sure that we had on our radar screen any potential housing development projects that the town wanted us to know about. Thank you.
Great. So thank you for letting me speak this evening. The Barrett's Mill farmers are interested in expanding the one of the units at Barrett's Mill Farm. You will recall, I'm sure, that it's a 2-family residence. One is a 3-bedroom, and the second unit is a 1-bedroom. And the town has leased that property to the Barrett's Mill farmers for the past 9 years, and just renewed the lease for another 5 years, beginning in March 2024. There are 2 farmers there. They each live in one of the 2 units with their families. And the farmer in the 1-bedroom unit has just had a child. And so she and her partner and their new baby are living in a 1-bedroom. And so they're looking to expand that. And they had been working both with Marcia Rasmussen and John Harris on kind of talking about the idea about preparing a CPA application for this. When Marcia and John left, Melissa reached out to me. I deal with her a lot, with both the farmers a lot on the land, because that's under Natural Resources Commission jurisdiction. And so she said, can you help us out? And so we're trying to prepare an application for that renovation to expand the 1-bedroom unit into it'll be a 2-story addition. So it will be a 2nd bedroom and then additional living space. So the 2nd bedroom would be upstairs and the additional living space would be downstairs. I just received plans on that today. I don't have a cost for that, but we are hoping to put this forward for a CPA application, and Liz Rust wisely suggested I bring this idea forward to this group to kind of vet this with you all and get your feedback on this. So very brief overview. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much. One question I had is whether any of the existing units are on the subsidized housing inventory, and whether this additional unit would be.
So it's
and I mentioned that just because for the CPA funds that the trust gets, our grant agreement limits us to 80% of AMI, so that the units can be counted on the on the subsidized housing inventory, and I just didn't know if this
So-
this property was on it or not.
So these are income restricted. They are not on the SHI. And Liz, you can correct me if I state this incorrectly, but my understanding is that to qualify for the SHI, units have to be offered up as a lottery, and we obviously cannot do that for these farmhouse housing units, because we need to have qualified farmers in place. You'll probably recall, I think it was the Affordable Housing Trust, that when this land, this final parcel of 2 acres where this farmhouse is located, when Patrick McGrath died in 2013, the town had the opportunity to buy this final parcel. He and his family had gifted the land adjacent, about 40 acres, to the town, or they'd sold it to the town. And when that acquisition was being contemplated by the town, one of the affordable housing interests, and I think it was the trust, but maybe it was another group, had contributed money towards that acquisition, recognizing the value of purchasing housing for farmers, because we recognize that, we as a town value farming in the community. We also recognize that farmers have a very difficult time living in the town of Concord because of the cost of housing. So it is not on the SHI, but the lease agreement requires that they cannot exceed a certain percentage. And I'm meeting with Liz tomorrow, actually, to sort of go through the specifics of this application, and we'll make sure that it meets the criteria for a CPA application for housing, because I do open space and sometimes recreation. But I believe that it falls within the parameters that are acceptable under the housing criteria for the CPA statute.
Thanks. So is the tenant making the application or the town? And how does the town decide what applications? And I guess I'd ask Carrie or whatever, how does the town decide what applications go where?
So I'll say the town is preparing the application. I'm drafting it with Liz, with a lot of input from the farmers, but it will be the town owns the property, the town owns the house, the town will be submitting the application. And,
Right.
Carrie doesn't have a lot of knowledge about this application, and I'm sorry, it's on my update to you for tomorrow. But yeah, things are just moving very quickly. This is a fairly recent, we've just become.
Well, we're all here tonight, so we're very, very grateful that you're here with us to put it on the radar screen. I guess the issue I'm raising, in fact, with any of the applications that might come from various town entities, and I know one of the issues that will likely come up when we meet with the select board will be what's the town's process for determining what applications are funded by various town agencies and which ones are, is the town supporting. There's lots of things that we would like to do with the housing funds, but they're limited overall. That I think for next year we've got $3.1 million in the trust fund. We've got, I'll put out a number. It says perhaps if I'll make the observation that if the CPC funds available this year were of a similar percentage to what they've historically given for housing projects, 20%, that might be an additional 400,000 that's available for housing projects. I'm very glad to hear that town ARPA funds might be yet another funding source. So that's all great news, but there'll be competing places or there'll be a number of places where applications can be submitted, the trust, the CPC, and the select board, it sounds like. And one of the real reasons we're getting everyone together is to just see, is there, what does the group think, or what kind of, what our thoughts are about what projects should go where, so that we can get, just make the advancements we're hoping to make here. I guess I'll stop there and see if there are comments from the floor. I don't see any hands up. Let me check screen too. No. Okay, so Nancy.
I'm just curious to know, now that agricultural accommodations have been mentioned, has any effort been made to figure out how seasonal farming housing might be added to our inventory, or maybe that doesn't even fit in? I don't know, but I know that farmers, Barrel Farm really needs seasonal housing. I suppose others do as well. So I wonder, how does that fit with the affordable housing program?
Liz Russ.
Yeah, so I mean, there's different kinds of, as Keith mentioned, there's different kinds of funding, and each of those funding sources will have its own requirements. And so, and then even when you say the SHI, those are the state requirements, and those are probably the strictest of all of the bunch. But to use CPA funds, you would need a restriction on the land. And so it makes seasonal housing or temporary housing very difficult if you have a permanent restriction on the land.
I should know this, but I don't. Is the CPA required restriction permanent, or is it a 20-year?
30-year.
30-year.
30-year minimum.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then there's also some variability. There's best practices, and then there's I work with many different communities, and they'll interpret CPA differently. I'll have to say that some communities are stricter and more conservative in their CPA, what is eligible under CPA, depending on their town council, and some are a little bit more lenient than others, right? So so you have that. And in these particular areas, when you have a local restriction, because these will be 100% AMI, so they'll be eligible from an income. The income limit's the easy part here. It's really going to be the restriction and what other pieces are required. There'll be some decisions, and especially for the town, because the town will be the landowner here. Different from Barrel Farm or something like that, where you have a private landowner.
I noticed Burton's screen is black now. So.
Yeah,
I'm here.
Maybe we can take that up again.
I think I see Diane poking her finger up there. Yes, here you are.
I just wanted to say that as a cool system, and that they provide housing, seasonal housing at Hutchins Farm, and they've worked out a fairly elaborate set of opportunities. So there are ways in which farming enterprises can do this, and it might be something that everybody would like to look into, because there's apparently a lot of programs. So
thank you. Good.
Keith, did I understand, Delia, that this would just be an expansion, no, not a new unit?
That's correct. So it would be an expansion of the existing 1-bedroom into a 2-bedroom with some additional living space. And I think the thing to consider here is that while it's not creating additional new housing, it is allowing the town to retain an important feature that, these Barrett's Mill farmers have been here for 9 years, and if we're not able to provide, adequate living space for the existing farmers, we lose them, or we lose one of the two partners, and I don't think that's, well, I'll just say it's not an additional unit. It is retention of the existing farming.
I didn't mean that to
Partnership.
sound negative. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on it.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question and the answer. And I think what will help all of us is the sooner we have a dollar figure, the sooner we can help direct, well, which would be the best line to stand in for prompt, for prompt action.
Great.
Thank you. And Bob from the Hugh Cargill Trust.
Yeah, Keith, I was wondering, are there any restrictions if we do implement this rental emergency fund through our group? Are there restrictions?
I'd ask Liz, who's worked with other communities that have implemented programs, to maybe weigh in on that.
I can say for rental assistance programs, there are definitely requirements for your emergency program. I'm not sure what you use today, but traditionally you would find both an agreement with the landlord and the tenant. You would find a income restriction, and you would find some kind of limitation on the amount based on the rent. So, if someone's renting a very expensive market rate rental, for example, that maybe they're not eligible for the amount of a month's rent, or, depending on how you're going to determine how much dollar assistance someone is eligible for. There's often also requirements for providing assistance only to tenants who are cost burdened, who are spending more than 30% of their income on housing, so that they truly can't afford the rent that they're paying. Now, sometimes with the emergency, you're paying arrears versus actual rent going forward, or like an existing, because it's kind of like a one-shot deal. So part of it is just having, kind of stated guidelines and more of a concrete understanding of what the requirements are for all parties, so that it's a transparent process. So there's Julie and then Lee.
Right.
Did that answer your question, Bob? It was a little vague.
I'm still, in other words, right, like, I know, like in Bonnie Wilbur's proposal, there was like a restriction on I think the income or whatever, and from an emergency. But I was just wondering, within from the trust, is there any limitation? Right now we're maybe proposing like $25,000 per year, but is there any, as far as the trust is concerned, are there any limitations, like how much we could give someone?
I think the trust has limitations on the income of the person you're assisting. For sure.
Yes, yeah. I mean, otherwise we would maybe try to set something in our committee, but I didn't know if there was anything already built in, to the money part of it.
Maybe this is a good offline discussion.
In other words, the 25, say it was $25,000. Okay.
But I don't know, however.
Thanks for the question, Bob, and I know Liz is going to follow up with you and your group. So thanks to both of you. Next, Julie and then Lee.
Liz, thanks for giving us some insights about this rental assistance process from an affordability perspective. One thing I was thinking about when you said 30% is, my understanding is a large portion of the Metro Boston area pays more than 30% of their income and rent. So that threshold probably wouldn't be difficult for a lot of folks who might be facing hardship. So maybe you are reaching, a target audience that really needs it. And the other thing I was thinking about, maybe this was brought up earlier, so I apologize if we've already covered it, is, during the pandemic, there was an eviction moratorium. And for a lot of folks, they saw it as a way to keep people in their homes. However, it didn't really address the people paying the mortgage in modest landlord situations, which in the Boston metro area is a huge issue, because a lot of working people become homeowners by buying multifamily properties, and they really need the rental income to be able to pay the mortgage. On the other hand, we also have large commercial landlords that probably have insurance and all kinds of money they're sitting on that can deal with an eviction moratorium and weather the storm and come out on the other side just fine, right? So having rental assistance in that context sort of makes sense to me, if you're looking carefully at who's the landlord receiving this, because it's also the landlord who's being subsidized in a way.
Yeah, the grant agreement that that we have used, that we developed through town council, has a provision that the landlord also signs that they will not evict for a non-payment of rent during the period of assistance. So so that gets at it a little bit of what you're talking about. It's not a perfect solution, but it's something.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks. My question has to do with the farm housing expansion, maybe directed to Carrie or anyone else who might know. First, does the town have a grant writer type person? And where I'm going with that is perhaps there's a funding source in the agricultural realm, state, federal, who knows? But I'm just trying to think outside of the box in terms of what other sources of funds might be available to accommodate that request.
We don't have a grant writer. We have lots of grant writers, but we don't have anybody who specifically does that. We do have one staff member who does spend a good portion of his time tracking down grant opportunities, both at the state and federal level. So my staffers know who that is. And we can put him on this as well.
That'd be great. Thanks.
So on this, and thank you. I just want to thank your indulgence for this long conversation about the spending plan. And I'm just wondering if there's before we take the remaining time, 20 minutes till 9, to hear quickly from the other groups whether there's any comments, feedback on any perceived priorities or use of funds. I guess we're and I would say that if your boards wanted to put them together, if you could meet between now and the 28th of August, we could report those to the select board on that. So that might be something that we want to look for as well. Diane?
This has been so helpful. As I'm sitting here, this is obviously just off the top of my head, but it would be really terrific if all of these funds could, if there were multiple applications, so the funds could be shared so that we could cover a lot of the projects. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I think if there's a way to make that happen, I think it would be terrific.
Thanks, Diane. Other comments from the floor? All right. Well, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for giving us the information that's helped us to put together as complete a list as we can have. I'll update it with the additional information we've heard tonight. And I'll turn it back to Liz to call on some of our other partners for some quick updates. Thank you all.
Yeah, why don't we, is Elizabeth Hughes still here? Are you still here, Elizabeth?
I'm here.
Yeah, so why don't we start with you on the MBTA zoning, if you don't mind.
Okay, I know you only have 19 minutes left, so I'll make it quick. Just putting in a pitch for next Wednesday is our third public community forum on the MBTA community zoning. The forum next Wednesday is virtual, and you can go to the dedicated MBTA communities webpage. There's a nice big radial button right on the front of the homepage, and you can find a link to that public forum, but it will specifically be a discussion about the zoning language itself. The last meeting was getting input on the boundaries, potential boundaries of a district, and next Wednesday will be about the actual zoning, what dimensional requirements is the community thinking about, and also a conversation about potential incentive zoning. So what that means is we might have an area that's zoned by right multifamily, but it may be 1 story, 15 units per acre, 2 parking spaces per unit, certain amount of open space, but the community can look at incentive zoning that says for specific areas, we may want first floor commercial, and then say, if you want to do first floor commercial, we'll let you go 2 stories residential, 1.5 parking spaces per residential unit. If you provide a community public open space area, so those are just some of the things that will be discussed at the forum next Wednesday, along with just a really robust question and answer period. So I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the group on MBTA zoning? Okay. How about the Housing Authority? How are you all doing?
We're busy. It's late. I'm actually going to hand over our update to Jen and to Rick. Is Rick here? There he is.
Yeah.
Rick, do you want to give a quick update on what your progress is, what you're thinking, what's going on?
Yeah, so Jen and I are working on transitioning 6 of our tenant-based vouchers into project-based vouchers. This will create 6 subsidized housing index units in Concord that aren't currently. 2 of those have already been talked about by Lee, the 406 Old Marlborough Road house, which is part of Assorbid Bluff. The one that Jen and I are working on right now is we have an existing unit, condominium unit at Riverbend on Forest Ridge. And we are working on transferring that to our LLC, which currently owns 18 units. This would be the 19th unit. And in the process of that transfer, giving it a project-based voucher, putting it on the subsidized housing index. After that, we probably would want to use another one of our vouchers on Commonwealth Avenue, which is our existing house adjacent to the Habitat house that's being built on Commonwealth Avenue. In terms of your funding worksheet, is a little bit incomplete as it goes to the Commonwealth Avenue house a project. It only shows the 50,000 that the town gave us for planning. But we also have $300,000 from CPC for construction. We're only going to need 60,000 of that because the rest for sewer work, Habitat is building the rest with their own funds. So there'll be a return to CPC of $240,000, which might show up well on the total because it's in the right direction. And so that would use up 4 of our 6 project-based vouchers that we've currently advertised for, if they all go through. So our next plan would be to purchase 2 condominium units in town. We would be going after units on the lower end of the scale of units that come on the market. Probably in the range of 600,000 is about as low as things go in Concord. And we would be looking to, this is something that our board has not voted on. This is just something Jen and I are batting around right now as an idea. We have to look at our final numbers for fiscal year 2023 and then look forward to 2024. But our thinking is that we can put some of our LLC money that we've accumulated in the last year in rentals towards a purchase unit, and then ask either the CPC or the trust for $400,000 to go with our roughly $250,000. There would be for a $600,000 unit and $50,000 in soft costs, I guess you would call it, real estate fees, legal fees, maybe unit upgrades. But that's a very rough idea of what we'd be looking for. So that would be $400,000 in fiscal year 2024. And that would leave one more project-based voucher. If no one else grabs it, we might then go and buy another unit. That could be 2025 or 2026. And we'd be looking for maybe another 400,000. And that would, of course, depend on how all the other ones go as well. But it's a rough idea of what we might be looking for. Sorry to go through that so fast, but we're getting ready.
Yeah. So when you say, can I just clarify, you say FY24, like this current fiscal year?
Well, I was looking at the funding sheet, so yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Thank you. That's great. So I've been meaning to sort of check in with you all and talk about some of the details underneath that strategy. That's it's great, very exciting.
Now, and heads up to the select board members who are here that we will be submitting modification to our pilot agreement for the current 18 units the LLC owns. We'd like to future units that we add to the LLC that go on the SHI, we would like to add to that pilot agreement.
Sure. Yeah. Sounds very logical to me. Very good. Any questions for the Housing Authority? Okay, very good. Any updates from the Select Board?
I guess I'll just repeat what Keith said earlier. We sent a letter into Mass Housing about the Novo Riverside Commons project. We generally are in support of the project based on input we got from town committees and town staff and residents. We had some concerns. I think major concerns were traffic, wastewater, and water service to the building as well. And we're hoping that we can negotiate some of these things with the developer, especially when the sewer hookup fee is something that they're going to want from the town. So far, I think it's looking very positive. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Any updates or any questions for the Select Board? Holly, are you still here? Holly or Charles or Steve Carr? Update from the foundation?
Yeah. Well, at our meeting, we've simply echoed what you were talking about here, which is that the priorities need to be on the Assabet Bluff and the Junction Village, in terms of actual building that's in the near future.
Yeah.
And I don't think we had other comments except that I want to mention that the Housing Foundation stands ready to assist the other groups relating to messaging, information, getting information out and so forth. So we have some funds available for those activities as needed by the housing groups. So that's about all.
Great. Yeah, I think that sounds like a good opportunity. We always hear that messaging and communication is there's never enough. People still don't know what's going on, they say, and so it's always helpful with so much activity to see how to be creative with messaging and outreach. So thank you, Charles.
I'll add that we're going to have a table at the Ag Fair, about affordable housing. So, well, that's part of the messaging.
Perfect. So maybe if people have flyers or information about their projects, maybe you can use that at your table, right? So it's like one affordable housing, sort of central place for the Ag Fair, right? Which is coming up. When is that, Charles? What's the date for that? It's like in the beginning of September, middle of September.
I honestly don't know.
It's September 9th. It's the 9th.
September 9th.
September 9th. Very good. Coming right up. Okay. Let's just see. Did we get everybody? Any CPC updates?
Liz, I'll be very brief. A lot of the things that we've been doing have already been touched on here on the Assabet Bluff funding and moving the funding over from Junction Village into the trust. We're about to enter our application period beginning in September. We did have the opportunity to have Keith provide this presentation to the committee last night with questions raised about what sort of commitment could we be making for housing as we're leading into that application period, and also the question as to whether the funding could be sort of provided on an undesignated basis, like we did and set first precedent for that Assabet, the Junction Village funding. That was a big chunk of money that we just moved over so that it could be used as quickly as possible. One of the reasons for doing that is, I think, especially after the Junction Village experience, that the folks on the committee don't want to bank money. We want to make sure it gets spent. That money sat with Junction Village because we funded it over 4 years, I believe, and then it sat there for a couple of years. So that was housing funding that just sort of was sat idle. The sense I got from the committee last night was they wouldn't be, rather than saying, look at our track record in terms of percentages, not wanting to commit to a funding amount because we need to consider housing alongside the other three focuses of CPA funding. And also, but historically we're at 21% going to affordable housing out of the four categories plus administration. Lately it's been higher. Last year it was about 30%, and the year prior it was lower than that, but that was because of the way the allocation for the Assabet Bluffs purchase, which was $1 million, came out. Only about a third of that purchase was allocated towards community housing, as it's termed under the CPA. So that was the guidance we said to Keith, to sort of look at our historical spending, but we can't provide anything specific. And then in terms of providing undesignated funds, it's interesting because in the slideshow you saw tonight with Keith, he laid out the timeline, the various housing organizations that we all represent when they were created. And when the CPA started funding, there wasn't a bank to put money in, there wasn't the trust, and there wasn't the CHDC either. So there wasn't the mechanism for taking developer contributions for partial affordable when in the zoning code, there's now you can have a partial contribution instead of building a unit as part of a PRD development. And we've also got potentially these long-term funding sources that are up for home rule. The question as to whether it should be CPC saying that now we're also just going to fund that trust. I think the folks on the committee weren't ready to sort of make any commitment one way or the other on that. And viewed it also, a lot of people voiced the opinion that it remains the CPC's responsibility to make decisions based upon applications in accordance with the requirements of the CPA at that committee level. So that's where things stand.
Okay. Yes, Diane, you're on mute.
I think it would be worthwhile mentioning that we think our funding is going to be less robust this coming year.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Diane. That was my first note to make and I forgot it. Yeah.
So that causes me anxiety as I listen to all the very good projects here and thinking,
Yeah. Yeah. I think we are all used to thinking about around $2 million, but it might very well be a fair bit below that, but we always tend to find out at the last minute. So
yeah,
fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you for the update. Did we miss any group or anyone here who would like to offer some comments or questions or observations? Looking around, seeing none. So here we are at 8:56. So it's going to take us a little while for each of the groups to adjourn their meeting if we're ready for that. It looks like maybe we are. So we'll start with the CPC.
Do you want us to do a formal vote? I've heard disagreements on whether that's required in accordance with municipal law. We'll do it. Okay.
I really have no idea whether that's required or not.
If you're on Zoom, it's supposed to be roll call.
A roll call. Thank you. Thank you. So Diane, could I get a motion to adjourn our meeting?
I move that we adjourn the CPC. And Nancy is seconding it. Yay.
Thank you, Nancy. I'll do a quick roll call. Diane, back to you. Are in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Nancy?
Nancy? Yeah.
Well,
aye.
Sorry. Aye.
All right. And Sue, you're on mute. You're next.
Aye.
Aye. And if we've got Ed still here, I'm flipping through the screen. I'm not seeing Ed. Okay. And so I'm an aye. So consider us adjourned. Thank you.
Perfect. And so the Housing Authority?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, Stephanie Krovac, aye. Ed? Oh, we just said he wasn't here. Rick?
Aye.
Stefan?
Aye.
And
B is here now.
B? I see her B. But no response. I think our meeting is adjourned. I think we can probably just close it out.
Okay, and Lee in the CHDC.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, roll call vote, Julie McClure,
Aye.
Ray Andrews,
Aye.
Lee Smith, aye. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, great. We'll be in touch for the next go round coming up in the fall sometime probably.
The trust.
Oh, thank you.
Lawson,
Thank you. Yes. Sorry.
Let's see. Linda Escobedo is making the motion. Mike is seconding on that motion. Linda,
Aye, and thank you, everyone.
thank you. Mike,
Aye. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Carrie,
Aye.
and I, and Keith, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Yeah, very good.